Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today we are back to working over here on the Tally-Ho Capstan, and we are in the process of putting this thing together. Now, previously we had gotten the motor and all the gear, the drive gear that's going to be up under the base of this all mounted. We got this on this pallet that's going to be shipped on, and we're just kind of building it up. I'm to the point now where we're ready to put the capstan drum on here that will drop down on this shaft. We got some bearings on the top and the bottom. And the big question, the unknown, is how well this gear that's down here in the bottom of this is going to mesh with the gear that's in the bottom of the capstan drum. So if all of our math was done right and, working off of drawings that were done in the UK and the work being done here in the US, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. It should, but we're going to check that out. Assuming all that goes well and we don't have to make any modifications or adjustments, we will go ahead and try to get the cap put on here as well. And there's a set of drive gears up in there where it can be driven either by the motor, which is a retrofit, a modern improvement to this old manual capstan, but it also has the hand cranks up on the top that you can still do it manually as well. And we've got to get some gears set for those. That was going to probably be a little bit more challenging because we got to get that gear height set just right for those gears to mesh. So let's get in here and get at it. So just in case you haven't been following along with this project and don't understand where we're at, this capstan base originally did not have this gear and all this motor and stuff hanging down beneath it. This was an add-on that we did to be able to motorize this so you didn't have to hand crank it and winch it up. So this was all designed and put together by Dave Webster over at Webster's Boat Machinery in the UK. He did all the engineering work on this, and then basically I was using his plans to modify this to make it work out for the Tally-Ho. So we've got the motor down here that will drive it. I had some questions on the motor, I think, in another video. That is a direct current motor. I'm not 100% certain. I want to say it's 48 volts. That may not be correct. It's not a 12 volt, though, I don't believe. But it should have plenty of torque to drive this, and that's what will power it. There is this little piece here on the side that you can turn, and when you turn this, it's going to raise the gear up from the bottom. That gear is retractable so that you can kind of go from having it in a mode where it's going to be driven versus having it in a mode where you can it'll disengage the motor and you can hand crank it. This will come up through the deck and it'll be adjustable just up and down. Like that right there. So this gear, let me show you what this is going to mesh to in the bottom of the capstan drum. So this is the capstan drum. This is what's down here on the bottom. We'll pull the anchor chain up. You can put ropes and whatever in this here to give you some leverage, and it will turn and rotate. Now on the bottom of this, I'm just going to kind of roll it back where you can see. This was a modification that we did. We added this internal ring gear that the gear on the bottom will come up into and mesh. This is all pinned in place on the drum, and that's what will drive this from the bottom if you want to use it in power mode. Originally, none of this was in here. It didn't have this gear in place. It didn't have the gear below. It was all manually done from the cranks up top. And this was, again, all designed by Dave Webster at Webster's Boat Machinery. He actually did the machining on this, sent it to me. Or he made the gear and sent it to me. I machined it and made it fit. We had to machine the bottom of this and the ring, this to basically be a nice press fit in there, and then it's pinned in place where it won't go anywhere. Another modification we had to make was we had to add a new chain gypsy in here. This is the part of the chain, the anchor chain will wrap around and you'll pull it up from. The original chain gypsy that was in here was just cast into this, but it was extremely worn out from years and 100 years of use. And additionally, the spacing for the chain was one that you can't get in. You can't get that type of chain anymore. And we needed to make a gypsy that fit the chain they were going to be using on the Tally-Ho. So we actually, again, machined this out, or I machined it out. Dave Webster designed the new chain gypsy. He machined that, sent it over here. We fit it in place. It's all bolted in place in there where it kind of just sandwiches in on either side into a machined area. And that's what the new chain will wrap up on. I'm going to put a couple of straps on this, and we're going to use the gantry crane here to lift this up and go over and set it down on here and give it a test fit. Now this Capstan drum just has plain bronze bearings, bushings, whatever you want to call it, on the top and the bottom that it rotates on. I'm going to put a little grease on these just to give it a little lubrication. There is some means in the cap of this thing to put oil in it to keep it oiled. So in normal operation, you would just use oil, but I'm going to put a little grease in here. This is just some good high quality Teflon grease, just to kind of get it started with. The bearings only come in contact in the top and bottom. The center section doesn't really come in contact with anything, so we're not going to worry about greasing that up. I will note before I put all this together that this is going to be taken apart when it gets up to Leo, and it's going to be all painted. I could not find a source here locally for the specific paint system that Leo wanted to use, somebody that could do that. So he's got someone up in his world that's going to apply the paint system on this. But so this will all come back apart and get a good proper paint job, but we want to send it up assembled and test it out. All right, here we go down. There we go. There it goes. All right, it's starting to look like a capstan. Man, that is nice and smooth. Look at that. All right. Hardly any, really no side-to-side play, which means we got our tolerances just right on those bearings. That's awesome. It's exciting to be able to kind of show some of the stuff actually how it works. You know, we worked on this ratchet mechanism in here. Now you can really see how it's going to function. So when you kick that dog over, you see this thing will rotate around, but it won't go back. So as it's moving around, it's going to automatically go up over that dog. So, you know, if you're in here and something gives way or whatever, it goes back, that's as far backwards it'll go. And we got a matching dog on the other side. So it goes around. Now you can flip this over on that lever, and that holds it up, and it will free spin in either direction. If we want to go the other direction, we can flip this over, drop it down that way. Now we got to stop coming back in the other direction. So get that where it'll free spin. So you can see how that works a little bit better down there now. Now the question is how does this gear mesh in here? We're going to raise it up and see. Keep your fingers crossed. So we'll bringing that up. Oh yeah, I felt the gear mesh in there. We'll bring it all the way up. Perfect. Oh yeah. I mean, there's just at least a little bit of play in there, but you want a little bit of play in those gears. I don't think you could ask for anything better than that right there. And of course, we can pull the gear up, and that will disengage it and allow it to free spin around. Man, that makes me feel so good. I've been worried to death about how this gear was going to mesh. And it is so nice to see it coming together. Boy, what a load off of my shoulders. Awesome. So up on the top of this drum, there is this gear that'll fit down in here. This is what the bevel gears up under the cap will drive the drum with. So when this is in place, the gears are engaged. You turn those out. So now with those in there, you crank on the handles on the top, and that's what manually turns the winch. Now, I imagine that we're going to have to do some adjustments to this gear to get it where it meshes with the gears up in the top. But I'm just going to clamp it down like it is right now, and we may have to come back with some washers or something and put up underneath these studs to kind of fine tune it. At least that's my thinking right now. So let me get the nuts that go on those. All right, here are the nuts that were on this one. We got it, and I will note, I checked thread pitch on these. These are 1/2 inch 12 threads. A standard 1/2 inch bolt in today's world is 1/2 inch 13 threads per inch, but back when this was made, 1/2 inch 12 was a common size. I ran into that many times on old machinery and stuff, and yeah, that's what we got. So I would have to make a new set of nuts for this if it needed it. I've got a 1/2 inch 12 tap, but these will be fine. We can use these originals with no problem. This one, of course, is going to be aggravating. That thread is just a little bit dinged up on the top. I'm going to take it completely off. I've got a 1/2 inch 12 die that I can run down on that nut or that stud and just clean those threads up. I think that'll be the thing to do. I noticed this one back here was kind of tight as well, so I'm just going to do them all. We'll just run a die down them like I said and make sure we got good threads. So I've got a 1/2 inch 12 die, and this is just a little die holder that it's made to go on drive with a bracing bit, but I'm just using it more or less just to kind of hold that to get in place to kind of get it started, and I'm just using a pair of pliers here to just kind of get it going down on that, cleaning the threads up, and if I can get the top of them kind of cleaned up, I think the nut will go on down without any problems. So much better. Yeah, okay. I think I'm just going to go hit all of these with this die real quick. Make sure I can get these threads started. That one there's starts but doesn't really want to go, so the other thing I want to do, I think before I put it on there, is that this gear was originally bedded down with some lead. They just basically poured lead up underneath this to kind of get that gear to go down, and I want to try to get this stuff knocked out of here just to make it go down easy, and I'll make sure that it beds down nice and flat, and then we may even rebed it once we kind of get everything set up like it needs to be. I'm not sure, but I do want to get this old stuff out of there first. I really don't want to get in here with a grinder and get lead dust all over my shop, so this will keep it a little more solid. That's much better. I got an area here where I don't think I've got any interference. There's still a little bit in here, but nothing that's going to interfere as we put this on. I'll also note that I played around with this and figured out that this gear drops down perfectly in one position. When you rotate it, it doesn't want to go down as well. It will go down in a couple of places, but you see the studs don't quite line up. So I feel like we've got it back where it was originally, and I put some witness marks on here to kind of make sure that if we took it back off, we could get it back on in the same orientation. And I feel like this is where it was originally. So we're going to go ahead and bolt this thing down. Another thing that I'll make a comment on here is that this gear was originally cast. That was not, the teeth were not machined, they were just all cast into place. So, you know, this is not a precision gear like you would find in a piece of high-speed machinery. You know, you figure if you're cranking on this thing wide open, I mean, you're probably doing good to get 10 RPM out of it. So it's a fairly slow speed. You don't really need super, you know, perfectly machined and aligned gears, which is in our favor because when we go to get this thing lined up, you know, it needs to be close. It needs to be close enough to work. But, you know, you're not going to be getting exact gear tooth spacings and stuff like you would in a high-speed gear. So we'll make life a little bit easier. So, and also the top of this piece is machined and the bottom of this gear is machined. So we're going two machined surfaces against one another. If we need to shim it, and I suspect we probably are going to have to play with the spacing between the gears in the top and this gear on the bottom, and we'll do that by shimming this base. We can put some washers up underneath these bolts, and as long as they're all the same height, and I can put on the surface grinder and make them all the same height if I need to, we can keep everything lined up where it's raising and lowering it parallel to the top here. All right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cap and just set it on here. I do need to get a key made, but I think for right now I just want to see how it's going to feel even before we put the key in here, before we clamp it down real good and tight. I'm just trying to get a feel for everything. So we're just going to drop the cap on there and see what happens. All right, another kind of nerve-wracking moment here for me. See how this is going to fit. I do want to at least kind of get my keyway where it's lined up, the same orientation. That's a good sign. Oh, wow. I am counting my lucky stars. I mean, I got a little bit of play in both of these gears, but it's going to pull down tighter when we tighten it all up. I might be lucky. I'll take luck, guys. I know there was a lot of skill that went into making this, but at this point in time, you know, we did everything we could to match this cap to the original, but there's just so many unknowns and whatever that you just don't know. So I'm going to take a little luck here. I think I might be lucky. I'm going to just lightly tighten that. I'm not going to tighten it up. I don't want to get it tight, but I just want to snug it in place. And let's see what we can, see if we can make this thing turn. So Dave is going to make, or has made, some true handles for this. I was hoping he was going to send those over with everything, but he didn't. When we were working on this, this is just a little key that we made up that fits in here, that we can kind of turn these by hand. I don't even have to put a wrench on it. I mean, obviously the cap's not keyed in place right now, but that is, that's working. I'm extremely happy, guys. This is better than I could have hoped for. Oh, got a little rough spot in the gear there. It must be in the top gear, because it's going all the way around. I'll take a look at that when we take it back apart. I think we're ready to put a key in this. Let me take this cap back off, and we're gonna make a key and put it together. Wow. So I got you looking at the bottom side of the capstan cap here, and I think what our problem, we were hitting something as we were going around, it wasn't allowing the clearance. And I can see a little mark right here. And I think what that is, doing some measuring, it's just barely sticking out too far on this side that it's hitting one of those nuts as it goes around, which is probably why this was machined. I was wondering when I machined it why they machined that area out. And while I did it as close to the original as I could, evidently I didn't take quite enough of it out in there to make, as it's going to fit like it is. So, solution, I'm not going to worry about chucking this back up on the lathe and returning it. This is the bottom side of this thing will never be seen once it's put together. I'm just going to get here with a grinder, and I'm going to take these gears out, and I'm just going to put some relief on all of this stuff in here just to make sure we got plenty of clearance, nothing hits in there. It's not going to hurt anything structurally. It's not ever going to be seen. So yeah, we're just going to grind some clearance in there. So let me get these gears taken out, and I get my angle grinder, and I think we can fix that real easily. All right, I just put a little bevel on all of these. Just make sure we got a little bit of clearance in there. I'm going to put it back together. You put the gears back in. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on those. I don't want to get too much grease on there because he's got to take this thing apart and paint it, but I'm going to put a little bit in there and try it again. All right, after taking that clearance out, that appears to be rotating all the way around without any problem at all. So I think we are ready to bolt this whole thing together. Like I said, I got to make a key to go in here before we do that. But this is coming together really nicely, guys. I'm really excited that this thing is coming together like it is. So let me take the cap back off. We got to get that key made. I think we can button this thing up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bed this down with some lead. I got some lead melting over there in a ladle that I normally use for pouring Babbitt bearings, and I use some of the same damming material that I use with Babbitt bearings in here to just kind of create a dam around this so I'm not having to fill the whole thing up with lead. But I think I got my lead ready. We're going to go get it, and we're going to pour it in here, and that should bed that gear down. We'll have good contact all the way around. Each one of these segments is kind of separate from the other, so we'll do each one of them individually. Whoop. All right, we'll let that cool down. Well, while that is cooling down, I can go ahead and start working on the key that's going to fit up through here. The cap fit down over. Now, this was the key that was originally in there, and I'm not even going to try to reuse it. It was really rusty, and we mushroomed it a lot trying to drive it out when we were trying to get this thing apart. I'm just going to make a new one that is properly fitted. But basically, it just is going to fit up into this slot that goes through the main shaft here, and you'll end up with a key that sticks out on either end, and then the capstan actually has that's broached out key slots on either side that will fit down right over that, and that'll keep that cap from rotating. So when you're cranking on this crank, the cap will stay stationary, and the capstan drum itself will actually rotate around that. So to do this, I've just got a piece of steel here. This is some 1/2-inch thick steel, just some scrap stuff I had laying around. I'm going to go to the bandsaw and kind of cut it out to shape, and we're going to take it to the surface grinder and grind it down to get it to the proper thickness. What is that, 7/16 I think is what it is. I have to double check that, but we'll get that to size and get a new key made, and we can put this thing together. I got a piece of steel here kind of cut out roughly to shape for this, but it's 1/2 inch thick right now. I need to go to 7/16, 0.4375. So we're just going to put it over here on the surface grinder and grind this thing down to get it to the right size. So let me turn on my mag chuck. That's got that in place. Whoops, raise my grinder. All right, we've got our key made here. I did kind of go in there and just kind of round over the edges to match the hole in here, and I also put some bevels on the top to kind of help it align, and it fits up in there just as, I mean, that's just a nice fit, nice as you can get, and it fits into the Capstan cap over there as well, into that key that we cut in there. So I think that's ready for us to drop the Capstan cap in place and make sure everything lines up like it should. All right, here we go. Boom. And that is locked in place. That will not rotate on there at all. So there's a nut that goes on the top here that tightens everything down, and it's a little bit tall for the threads. And this is a new nut that I purchased, a stainless steel nut. And if you compare it to the original nut, you can see that nut is taller. So I'm going to take this over to the metal lathe, and we're just going to shorten this down to get it back to the original size, which I think will be a better fit. And yeah, that's probably the last step here. All right, we got that nut cut down more to size, and it's ready to screw on here now. And I'm not going to tighten it down because I don't want to get this thing stuck on there. He's going to have to take this apart when he gets it into his shop, put on the boat. We're going to paint it, so but I just want to kind of snug it on there just enough. That cap is nice and tight. Let me find my little tool to make sure we can turn it still. Man, that is just so effortless. I am really, really happy with that. There's just a little bit of play in this gear, but again, when we really tighten this lid down and torque this thing down, it's going to bring it down a little bit closer, but I want to have a little bit of play in those gears anyway. I don't want them to be too tight, and they seem to be engaging just fine as it is. And like we've shown before, the bottom gear is engaging good. You know what? I think it's finished. So again, when this gets up to Leo, he's going to have to take it completely apart. He's got a guy up there that's going to paint it. They'll want to paint it in pieces and put it back together. So I'm not going to snug this thing down all the way. When they put this together for the final time, they need to put some anti-seize up in the top and on this. I'm not going to put that in there right now. Again, it's just going to make a mess for them to have to clean up for painting, and I want to keep that down to a minimum, but it's done. It is done, finally. This has been a job. Wow. I'm excited. I'm probably not showing it, but I am really, really excited right now to see this thing and to know that it came together at the end and everything went together smooth as it is. I will not lie to you guys. I have spent, I don't know how many nights laying in the bed thinking about everything that could go wrong when we started putting this thing together. Gears not meshing, having to put shims or moving things around. And in my mind, okay, well, if it doesn't go together right, what am I going to have to do to fix it? And there was just so many questions in my mind. You don't know what kind of relief I have that we were able to put this thing together and it just all fit like it's supposed to. And not trying to say that I didn't think my skills were up to this task or anything like that, but there's, again, with me working on it here, the design work going on in the UK, parts being shipped back and forth, working off of measurements, and me working in inches and Dave working in metric. And I mean, there's a million things that could have gone wrong, but didn't, thank the goodness. So we've got this thing ready to go. So next thing up, guys, is I'm going to crate this thing up. We're going to box it up, have it completely enclosed. And I've got a gentleman that Leo reached out to up in the Atlanta area that's going to come down. He's actually going to pick this thing up, and he's going to drive it clear across the country. I don't know how many miles that is. I'm guessing 3,000 miles maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look it up here in a minute. But he's going to carry this up there to Leo so that he can get it as quickly as possible. And like I said, Leo's going to have to disassemble it when he gets it there, get it to his paint guy, get it painted. I just was not able to paint this myself. I'm not a paint guy. With me, if something is painted, it's usually either with a paintbrush or a rattle can. Leo was wanting a very specific paint put on this, paint system put on this. It's kind of a marine type paint. And I called around all the places around here that do paint stuff, like auto body places and stuff like that. Nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It was a system that they weren't used to working with. And of course, I live in a rural area. There's not a whole lot of choices to begin with. If I lived in a bigger city, it probably would have been easier to find somebody that would be willing to do it. But without having to really go to a lot of effort, I was not able to find anybody. Leo has someone up there in Port Townsend area, I think, that can do it. He's found somebody, so we're going to let them take care of the paint system on here. I'm a machinist, not a painter, so I feel a lot better about that. I told Leo I could go buy a paint gun and try to do it myself, but I didn't want to be learning how to paint on his part here, where he's really expecting a nice finish on this. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at there, but it's ready to go. I'm so excited. All right, I'm going to get my crate built. I'll probably show you guys what it looks like before it heads out the door, but this job is done. So before we box it up completely, Leo did want to know how much it weighed. So I took it back off the crate. It was just a couple of lag bolts holding it down. 534 pounds is what it all weighs with the motor and everything on it, and that comes to 242 kilograms for you metric guys. So anyway, I'm going to put it back on the crate, and we're going to get this thing boxed up in some plywood. I'm probably going to wrap it in shrink wrap too, just because in case it goes through any rain or whatever on the way up there, it won't hopefully get too terribly wet in there. All right, let's get it ready to ship out of here. Well, there we go. We've got it crated up, and it is ready to make the trip out west. So it's going to be a little less than 3,000 miles, I looked, from where I'm at in South Georgia to Port Townsend, Washington. About as far as you can go, unless you go down into Florida, and I'm only about 60 miles from Florida, so it's about as far as you can go in the U.S. Between points where this thing's going. So anyway, I'm happy to see it leaving the shop. This has been a fun project. It's been a challenging project. I'm going to be honest with you guys. There were times as I got into this thing that I was wondering if I hadn't got in over my head. But you know, you just take these things one bite at a time. You get in there and you figure it out. You get it done. I use just about every machine in my shop working on this project. I use my 16-inch lathe, the Monarch 16-inch, the Monarch 28-inch. I use the Lodge and Shipley lathe out at the museum. I use my Wells Index vertical mill, the Kearney Tracker 2D rotary head mill. I use my Carlton radial arm drill. I use my Lucas horizontal boring mill. I use my Marvel bandsaw. I use my Dual bandsaw. I use my Thompson surface grinder back there. All those machines got used. My arbor press was used on this project. About the only things in my shop that I didn't use was my horizontal milling machine, the K&T 3H, and I tried to use it to actually to do the slotting, but it just didn't have quite enough capacity. And I didn't use the metal shaper or planer in there, the metal planer in there. I didn't use that one. But we really kind of taxed my limits on what I was capable of doing as far as having the right equipment to do this job. And I will say this too. When I told Leo that I would do this, I was thinking, oh yeah, we'll take that thing apart, you know, freshen it up, do a little repair here and there, put it back together. I honestly, when I got into it, he told me he wanted to mechanize this thing. I didn't really grasp at that time what all that was going to involve. And a lot of the really complicated parts of this job had to do with the motorization of it. And again, Dave Webster at Webster's Boat Machinery, he is the guy that came up with all that stuff and did an absolutely fabulous job on the stuff that he made over in the UK. I could not have done this project if it had not been for the work that he did to send it over here. Some of the stuff that he did was beyond my capabilities with the equipment that I have in my shop. That internal ring gear, I mean, that was a CNC job. I mean, I would have had to send it out. So, you know, but he got that stuff done. And we worked together well as a team. It was challenging, again, working with someone that I've never met, seen face to face, really two people, Leo and Dave, and both of them about as far apart from me as the other, one in the UK and one on the other side of the country. But we managed to get it done. And it was a good project, a good learning experience for me, and hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing it as well. Guys, we're going to sign off there. Hopefully we'll get to see this thing get put on the tally-ho and see it in operation very soon. But with that, that is a wrap. Probably the final wrap on this project. I hope it's the final wrap on this project. I hope there's nothing that comes up after this that we have to go back and do. I don't think there will be, but that is a wrap. And as always, thanks so much for watching this series. Thank you to all the tally-ho people that kind of came on board on my channel and discovered my channel as part of this. I hope you stick around and watch a lot of my other content that's going along. We do projects, you know, kind of like this all the time. We've got some really cool things coming up, and hopefully you'll stick around and see what we do out here at VintageMachinery.org. Big, huge thank you to those who have subscribed to the site. Thank you to those who support the site financially through Patreon, PayPal, etc. I will say some people have asked, you know, what am I getting out of this? I'm not charging Leo anything for my labor. Now, he is covering my expenses on materials. And we've got a sizable chunk of money tied up in materials on this. But I basically told him I would do this project just because I enjoy doing it. It's something I thought my channel would enjoy. And it would hopefully grow my channel. And it has grown my channel because, again, that collaboration, doing the project, that's really what I was more after than the money. You know, I'm doing this for Leo because I think he's doing a really cool project out there. And I am just blown away and impressed with the craftsmanship that he's putting into that. And I have enjoyed watching his series as much as I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. And hopefully you've enjoyed watching mine. So with that, guys, we're going to sign off. We'll catch you on the next video. Again, thanks for watching.